Good afternoon. Not sure we've ever had a meeting that wasn't a 7 a.m. meeting, but this was a good day not to have a 7 a.m. meeting. So, like to call the tax increment financing or investment zone board number one board of directors meeting, regular meeting, November 6th, 2024 to order. And the first is to administer the oath for Lacey Wagner and Rob Marshall. And thank you all very much for agreeing to serve, and delighted to have you here. So,
Lacey and Rob, if y'all just turn around and raise your right hand. Say your name where I state mine. I, Liz Caraway. There you go. Do solemnly swear. Yeah, y'all just say mine. Yeah, you're repeating. That I will faithfully execute the duties of the office.
And I will faithfully execute the duties of the office.
TFRZ Board of the state of Texas. And will to the best of my ability. Preserve, protect, and defend. The Constitution and laws of the United States. And of this state. So help me God. If y'all will sign for the signature of the officer, and then on the second page, you just return to me when it's over.
you're official now.
Yeah.
You get voted.
I need you to vote.
Yeah, just in time.
Next item, the public comments. Understanding no one has signed up.
I do have a comment.
Okay.
Thomas Cloud just had a baby, his very first the other day. Her name is Charlotte.
That's right.
He looks pretty good for not having
Yeah.
sex for 2 weeks.
Okay, next item is minutes. Consider approval of the minutes from the meeting held on September 25th, 2024. Motion, okay?
Second.
Motion, second. Any questions? Not all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, going to the regular agenda, item number 3, receive current project updates, discuss possible future projects, including not limited to review of current projects under construction, review of projects or design, and review of future projects. So
We have
project
we
here.
got a PowerPoint presentation for 10 items and just a little bit of a precursor is that the financing chair and the project chair and the chair worked with the city staff over the last month and really working to get ready for this financing amendment. And so we reviewed all the projects, worked with our engineering staff, KPA, to really work through all of the OPCs and any scope changes. And so I'm going to go through those. These are the 10 items. Number 1 and 7, I am going to have David go ahead with KPA to give those presentations. I'm on the outer loop change order. Myself and Bob will be abstaining from that just because we are working with one of the landowners there and just for conflict of interest, we didn't want to do it. On number 7, the land for that detention pond is owned by the Bioscience District, and I believe Brian, myself, and Tyler will end up abstaining on that one. So as you're going through the agenda, you'll notice that we dropped some of those lines out so that we can abstain. So on item number 1, we're going to have David talk about this change order.
Thank you, John. Good afternoon, everyone. I know most of you are pretty familiar with this project. It's been ongoing for a little bit now. Pretty signature project for the city of Temple, and really the closure of our outer loop on the north side to tying into I-35. This is a project that's been going on for quite a while. We started this in 2013, so we're pushing 11 years now. But one of the great things about this, got a great contractor on it. We're moving very quickly. But with the North Industrial Park Master Plan that we've done, we do have some changes that are coming, and these are reflected in the financing changes that Tracy has completed. So if you recall, the North Industrial Park Master Plan has many elements to it. And of course, this project was already designed and bid out prior to us completing that master plan. And this is going to sound like a lot of work and a lot of change order work, but everybody keep in mind, this is close to a $50 million project. And so you can kind of see part of that North Industrial master plan that has been done up there, and a lot of retail space and a lot of improvements on areas that we have we own, and so we will get increment off of that. And so a few of the things that we've done, we've gone through and developed a different turn lane and a two-way access around the BNSF on the east side of the road, as well as a full intersection at the future road that will head north. Those have had some impacts to the projects that we will incorporate into this change order. That's a little closer look to it, where we can feed those areas and start to capture and build, and increment will be developed off of that. It does affect the roadway section, the connection underneath the bridge around BNSF Railroad, and then we're going to tie back into Moores Mill Road because with that master plan we have developed some retail to the south, and again, things that we own and things that we'll be able to get increment off of that will feed our financing plan. A pretty large grading plan to the south as well, so we can get that more shovel ready. So that's more attractive land is also included within this change order. And there's another look at it with the northern road and then a future park road that we'll zoom in on at this location. If you've ever been out there, and we encourage that you do, it's a beautiful site. There's an old SCS pond that is just to the north of that, that we've owned for quite some time. So the city of Temple's looking at making that park space. And in order to do that, we're going to make some adjustments to the property that has the access easement, and as well as the water line that feeds to the north with the roadway that'll feed that future park, which will be an incredible facility for the city of Temple. That lake out there is just absolutely gorgeous. Very large fish in it too, just as a FYI. And so that's part of this as well. And then we've had several things that have popped up on the project. Pendleton Water Supply Corporation is in this area. We found several conflicts and have actually found several of their lines and showed it to Pendleton where those are located. So those things will be included in there. We had at the beginning, before we bid the project, a permit from BNSF that was signed, sealed, and approved. Had gone through this board as well as council. They came back to us after we had bid the project and informed us that we needed to provide lights under the bridge. That's a fairly significant item. So that will be included in this change order. And we've had a few utility issues, or dry utility issues, or conflicts, I should say. We do find some rock out here. And so we've had some dry utilities, one of which was the fiber that is feeding Meta that didn't meet their plans. They hit some rock and kind of decided to stop there. And so we have to make some adjustments in order to make those two things fit together. And then we've also got some things that are happening on Hart Road with QT, and also to service the east side of Site 40, which is that site for water and wastewater. Again, all included in this. And these are items that we've been talking about for quite some time now. So this is agenda item number 8 on your agenda today. We've had to do quite a bit of design in order to get this to a point where we can send this to the contractor for pricing. The good news is, like I said, it's a unit bid project, so a lot of it we've already got unit prices for, so we're just extending those units. But there are some new elements in here that we'll have to get pricing for. And we're still finalizing all of this, but we feel like that change order is going to be in the neighborhood of $3 million. And once we finalize that with the contractor, we'll be bringing it back to the committees and this board. But again, keep in mind, $50 million job. So that is a big number, but in the scheme of things, it's not huge. So you can see 46.5 right now for the construction funding. And that's a lot. And the change order is going to be a lot. And we'll go through every item of it and we'll bring that back to you. But for this item, I'd be happy to answer any questions about North Outer Loop. And right now, just so everybody remembers, this project currently, and it'll extend because of this change order, but currently scheduled to complete at the end of April 2026.
So what are we going to be voting on today? Just the 146?
Yes, we have to design all that. So there's a voting item for us to design.
Got it.
Item number 8.
Yeah.
Item number 8 on your agenda.
Yeah. Got it.
And happy to answer any questions.
Second item is the Old Howard Road. As you know, off the outer loop north, we bought a considerable amount of land. Most everything around this road, both on the east side and the west. There's just a couple tracks that we do not own. But basically everything that you can see there, we will be able to access. A lot of the houses that you see on there have now been removed, taken down. We've got about 2 more to go, and all of the land and septics and everything are taken out, and so that we can certify these tracks. So the first thing we're gonna be doing is getting ready to get this thing going. If you look at the master plan, this is something maybe a lot of people haven't seen yet, but in our master plan for the North Industrial and Logistics Park, we really have showcasing a lot of nice entryways and some trees. So from our original OPC, we have really updated and upgraded the road to making sure that it's a nice gateway into that, since we're gonna have close to 1,000 acres to the north. You can see we've sort of laid out how the buildings could go in here. Those are a lot of 500,000 and 1,000,000 square foot warehouses or companies that we could put into this. And so that's really how we're wanting it to look. Also in this project, we're making sure that we can have a unified drainage and not have a whole bunch of on-site for each ones. And so as David really dug into this and has looked at the drainage, he's updated some of those numbers. That way, when we have people come in, we can really offer them a shovel-ready site that they don't have to do on-site drainage. And so we currently have for 2024, 787,900 for design, and for 2025, a 1.2. The status of that is we're at 60% complete, and once we get this financing amendment and moving forward, we're hoping to get this project released in the next 3 to 4 months. So we're hoping on construction has gone up, and then the financing plan, we're gonna have 3.344 in 24 and 9.606 in 25. Our construction admin number is 433,100, and fiscal 25 is 133,100. These numbers, as we present in the financing plan, will allow us to release this project.
Yeah, and just keep in mind that we are already in 25.
Yeah.
For zone purposes, because it starts in October.
So when we talk about the 24, that's where the original dollars were. And so we've already moved into 2025. Thank you. So is there any questions on that project? If not, we'll move on to the next. This is the railway we had. This is the spur. That's our rail yard. The red lines are showing the rail. And as you can see right across from HEB, we have a rail yard. And we own that rail line. We have our own double engine that moves cars around. The red box with an arrow down to it is a spur that will feed East Penn. We've known we were going to do East Penn. What happened with the announcement of SAIA, we've had to extend where we're tying into the main line of our own so that we can serve both East Penn and SAIA off of this switch. And so that funding has gone up a little on the 2025 to 3.220000, so 3.2. And our testing in construction services is 308,200. So again, this is just an updated OPC that reflects the change in scope to move this switch so that we can get SAIA and East Penn on the same line. Any questions there? Next item is the sewer. This is a sewer line upgrade for Niagara. Long story short, Niagara had just a water system there at once, and most of that was used as warehouse. They had bought a 1,000,000 square foot warehouse over behind Buc-ee's and have converted that whole plant into production. So where they were just running water, now they have aseptic lines. Aseptic are power drinks, various type of drinks. So they've got 3 lines in there. A bunch of us were able to tour that plant. Man, y'all, they've really done incredible amounts of work inside that building compared to what they had presented. They've learned a lot. This is their first aseptic line in the whole company. So they're doing those power drinks for HEB and for Walmart and for, I think, Costco too, some of the others. And so what had happened with this is they got a lot more wastewater going out. So we're going to have to upgrade that line so that we can handle them, East Penn, Sayah, and we still have some additional lands in there. In this upgraded wastewater line, the zone is going to pick up 932.3 out of the total OPC of 3 million. The city is using their own funds and working with Niagara to recover the rest, but we are suggesting to the group that we pick up 932,300 for this project and for the doing the design at 367.7. Any questions on the sewer line? Also gives us some pretty good capacity out there. We are, rather than just blowing the line and keeping it minimal, we're setting a new line in, which will give us a considerable amount of capacity that we will be able to use even some of the north. So we've looked at how we'll be able to go north with some of this across the loop. So it will give us additional capacity, which will be good. Downtown, the 3rd Street pedestrian facilities landscaping is ready to bid. Plans are done. As you can tell, we're shutting a lane down on the overpass and going to where the old Encore was, shutting the street down so that we can start our movement towards T-Med. We're really looking at coming from the other direction on Veterans Boulevard and 3rd Street and connecting in the middle here in the future. So this project will allow us to have a hike and bike lane over the top. You can see it here at the old Encore site before. So where that tower is, everything to the right of that is the GISD's what is the facility? Nutrition in that. And so that was in their bond program, you all. And so David, this orange section, we're going and helping them tie into this whole pedestrian facility. They have done their whole design, so I thought we would throw it in to show you. One of the things David had to do is he was working with MRB, the engineer for GISD on this project, to make sure that our project married up with theirs. But it's really going to help that quadrant. So we really are taking advantage of the money that the GISD is spending in that quarter to make sure that we have a nice presentation and tie it into our 3rd Street facility. So that project, it didn't have a dollar change. So it's at 74,714 for design, 4.6 for the construction, 260,000 for admin, and right away for 205,762. This project is ready to bid, so we'll be seeing this go out by 1st of the year. Any questions on that?
Is that right away already?
I'm not sure we have any right away. We've got to buy. This is all was in our original funding in case we needed any. Do we know if we need any?
I remember looking at the triangle at one time.
We were looking at the triangle one time, but I think you guys had separately acquired
I don't
a piece of that, and we can get the project done.
see that middle triangle or that. We have those funds. We have not acquired that. If you look at that bottom little triangle, we don't own that. We really thought we should be looking at that. The top triangle to the right side, we are doing, but not the lower one. And so we put dollars in there for right away, and it's good to have in there if we do bump in anything as we do this project.
So that triangle's not gonna happen.
That's not gonna happen in this project. See that these two are. You can see it's kind of wish I had a pointer, you can't point on that, but right under the 1st Street, that's the triangle that we think at some particular point would be nice to acquire. It's just a bunch of slabs down there. And so it's a gateway into downtown. And so this was a drawing we had all looked at saying we should attempt to do that, we probably should still attempt to do that.
We did acquire half of it, and the other half is on the market, so if you give me a green light, I will go get it right now.
Is it more than that 250?
What, little bit, but not much.
What's a little?
What's a little bit?
That's also on a real estate deal, so that would be a good thing to look at, seeing if we could acquire. We really would like to do that, Gateway. Downtown city center, again, it's change order. We're really moving. Because every time they move 100 feet, they find another tank in the ground, David. So most of this change order is to do with that, right?
We have a few items in there now. Yeah, you need me to go over those.
Yeah, go over those for me. I was looking at this and it's a moving target for me, so.
So here's the map that illustrates what this change order reflects. And, you know, as we've talked about many times on this project and really all of the projects that we do in downtown, we've got another one that we just released at Santa Fe Community Market. These are wonderful projects, but things that were done in the late 1800s, they tend to leave us surprises. And so we continue to find those. And of course, we're moving towards the end of the project, which will be probably February of next year. But we have to address them as we go. The three yellow boxes that you see on 4th Street, which is the one with the enhanced intersection to the north, as well as the one on Central between 2nd and 4th. Those are all fairly large underground storage tanks. So those, once we find those, and all of them undocumented, unregistered, we have to remove those, and there's a process that goes with that with the state of Texas. And then the subsequent issue with it is you've got a big hole but where you're about to put a road. And so things that we did not anticipate having to backfill and compact and make stable so that we can construct a road, then we have to do that. So that's one of the issues. We did find a fire hydrant that we had a seal leaking on, so we've replaced that. That's one of our items. When we got to the portion from 2nd Street back to the west on Central that ties back in towards the alley, we looked out there and made a decision as a team to go ahead and modify some of that so that we could get where O'Brien's is and where Secondhand Rose used to be, raise that curb up, make that a little safer. That was a pretty minor change order, but we've done all that. We've been out there and looked at it. Looks great. That's the yellow on the far left. Fortunately, we've had some rains, and so it drains great. I was really excited about that. So that has been included in this. The Turner Behringer project from when we did the original utilities back in 2020, 2021, they've had to make some adjustments on their facility as well. A couple of things there. One of the wastewater lines that we had put in back in 2020, 2021 was not at the same elevation that their construction ended up at. So we had to lower that and tie it back into the wastewater main. They had to lower it from what they thought it was going to be back at that time. So we've done that. And then their apron coming off of the Han Hotel, we've made some adjustments to that to fit what they had to do to make their project work. So those items are included with the Turner Behringer project. And then we will have to shut down one of the transformers to install our lights. It's the only safe way and only legal way to do it. It's the transformer that sits on the south side of Central on the east side of the alley that was installed back in 2020. Unfortunately, Bird Creek Brewing, who makes some phenomenal beer, national and state awards, they have to have constant electricity or otherwise the beer goes bad. So we're installing or getting a temporary generator to make sure that, that they can stay in operation. We don't run the beer. It's real close to our office. We want it to stay good. So that's another one of the items that's in here. So quite a bit of stuff, and some of it's a little bit of a catch up, especially with those underground storage tanks. It's not something you can just leave there. We got it. It would completely shut that project down. And so 2 items on this: agenda item 7 and agenda item 10. One is the 58,000 is for all of those tank removals, and then the change order for the items that I just talked about. And happy to answer any questions on this.
Getting really close to being probably the last of change orders on this, wouldn't you think? Close?
For the current scope work, I believe so, yes.
It's looking good. Any questions on downtown city center?
So for where we had to lower the
the line versus having them put in a lift station? Was that just agreed to prior to, or versus just telling them they got to put in a lift station?
Yeah, I think it's probably a little bit of a chicken and the egg situation. You know, they were still in design and their MEP gave us a location to hit. You may recall they had a basement, in that facility. And at one time they were gonna have a pump, for lack of a better term, to pump that up.
Yeah.
So when we did the first phase of this and we had to get those utilities in so that they could go to work. We put it at the elevation that they thought they would be at. And once they actually got to their final design, it was considerably lower. Of course, that's gravity, so we then have to lower it. And the only way to do that is all the way back to the main.
But, okay, I'm not trying to be dense, but why don't we just tell them put in a lift, that they'd have to do it?
Above my pay grade.
Okay. What's that?
We'd have to maintain it. Somebody would.
We could have had on site.
Yeah. I just know we had to put in a lift. So, you know, I just thought that was the process, so.
I see you should have called David.
Yeah, I should have.
And you could have abstained and then not had.
Yeah.
These downtown projects are like that.
Yeah.
Every single project, every single street we've done, we still got all of Avenue A and just a ton. And so they're a lot of fun. Power, water, sewer.
Yeah.
Drainage, they're tough projects, really. Any questions on that at all? No?
Okay, the Friars Creek Detention Pond. If you recall, this is one that's in conjunction with our Veterans Memorial Boulevard project. In order to raise those drains to City Temple standards, and that is a TxDOT facility, detention is required to do that. Veterans Memorial does come down towards Temple College, and is all that drainage is fed to Friars Creek via the concrete line channel that runs through Temple College. In the projects that we are designing right now and in first phase will be released in 2025. We are upgrading those facilities so they can handle the 25-year storm for the roadway and then the 100-year storm for cross drainage.
And those two, just so you know, the two boxes, those are, that's what we're talking about, but that's what's owned by the Bioscience District, just for reference, both the red box and the green box. Sorry.
No problem. So anyway, one of the solutions to that, and we looked at many locations, our D solution to that is to do stormwater detention. We've gone through several scenarios in order to look at what's our best options, because Friars Creek has mostly been built out all around it. So we're limited on where we can put a detention pond that will serve that stormwater. This was our best option, as John said, that the green and the purple right now is one holistic tract that's owned by the Bioscience District. And the design is taking the eastern portion of that in order to develop a detention pond so that we can accept that stormwater through the concrete line channel, detain it, and not increase the flooding. And there is quite a bit of flooding that's happening on Friars Creek, but actually decrease that flooding and reduce the floodplain with this detention pond. And so for those of you that aren't familiar with detention ponds, that's what it looks like. To your right is Fifth Street, where the concrete line channel comes in. You can kind of see the little in the detention pond itself in the top right corner. That's our culvert that's feeding it. And then of course, you know, the green would be the bottom of it, and then the rest of it are the berms that's holding that water back. And so what the detention pond is actually serving, it'll accept that water, and that area will store it, and we meter the release. And so you have the release coming out of the detention pond will be much less than if it just went straight through. And that's how we serve Friars Creek and reduce the flooding in that area.
Is there an acceptance culvert from Friars Creek to the north, or is it we only taking it off the district?
Yeah, so the little green section that you see just north or just to the top of the detention pond, proposed detention pond, is where the water goes now. And what we will do is we will take low flows and keep that channel live. And so it's still a really nice area. We got a beautiful hike and bike path that goes to Friars Creek, sorry, with a pedestrian bridge over and then feeds that whole area. And we want to keep that live. We want to keep that, a water feature. But what we don't want to do in those big storms is flood and then, then to have increased flooding at Friars Creek. So we'll have two outlets into that. So the low flows will continue to feed that. So we get the benefit of that. But when we get big storms, I mean, we're limited. We cycle down what goes to the channel and then feed that detention pond and meter it out. So we've modeled all that and we've got it to where it'll work. We're excited about both of those because it does keep this area beautiful, keeps that water flowing during the lower storms, and then we get the big storms, we can hold some of that water and meter it out. So this one is the construction's on project funding lines 147 to 148 for about 5.4 million. And then we've got construction administration for 353,000 and right away for 3.75 million. That is a pretty large track over there that we need. And that's the only way we can get enough volume that we can store that detention pond. And that's why I gave you this one. So you can get a pretty good picture about what that looks like on that whole green area. So we're using that entire green area in order to develop that. And so we need a large area, which gets us to those numbers. And I'd be happy to answer any questions on this one.
Next one is the reason they're doing the detention pond is so that we can move ahead on Veterans Memorial from the Temple College Apartments out to Avenue O. We've got this in really 3 segments. We're going from the apartments to Avenue U is one segment. The next one is Avenue U to R, and then R to O. We might not make it all the way to O. We are doing this project with grant funding that Bryn and the staff has been able to get. So it's been 2 different grants. So this is a fully funded by grant funding and non-increment money. And so really good for Temple, Texas to be able to get this done and not use an increment. And so it's we got sort of a timing issue to get this done. That first grant has got to be released and started by 9/25. So David is really pushing hard to get KVA's portion done. TechStop will be in charge of that, so it'll take some effort. And then the second grant, we will definitely be able to get U to R, and then we'll just use the per unit bid numbers when they come in to see how far we can make it to O. Because we don't want to leave any of the dollars on the table. This is what it will look like when we're done. Well, all the land in front of VA, they have given us easements so that we can do this. You cannot buy property from the United States government, but they allow us to use an easement. So I don't know how many years ago, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we got John Carter and others to work with the government to allow us to get that easement so that we can really take our curb and gutter all the way up to the right of way line and then use their property for the hike and bike trail. And so that really helped us get this project done. So again, real important to emphasize the fact that 20 million grant non-increment funding. This is real good. You can look at the bottom line is that right now we're projecting this to be 19,342,000. So we got some dollars there left over to be used on other parts of this project. So that first grant is on the TC to Avenue U, which is 9 million. Construction's 8.37000. You got 545,000 in construction admin and right away for 100,000. So that's the first project we're going to be trying to kick off here by the 9/25, and then directly following that, as soon as David can get it all together, get those first 2 projects released, we'll go Avenue U to as far to O as we can, and those are again in the 2 funding categories. So it's 8.715. Construction's 8,545,000 for admin, 150,000 for right of way. And again, that last piece, we think we'll pick up the remaining dollars that we have on the table. We will know more when this thing bids out so that we know what the bid is to be able to use the quantities, prices, and we'll just apply that and have David come back and say, you guys, based on this bid, we're going to be able to go this far. And so hopefully we get a real good bid and go further than get it all the way done. It would be really nice.
And just to be clear, we couldn't access that 20 million without a drainage solution.
Correct.
So
Well, yeah.
the drainage solution you just went through,
It's, you know, it's the amount of water, if you've ever driven Veterans Memorial during a storm right now, it's bad. And so in order to make that a serviceable road, we've got to capture that storm water and take it somewhere. Very fortunate, the Temple College Channel will convey it, but once we get to Fifth Street, we have a problem.
you know, anyway, but
And so without detention, the project does not work.
And they don't really detain much on that VA, right? I mean, it's-
They do,
Well, they don't, I mean.
they do nothing.
Government property, so we're taking all their water and taking care of it, but it's a really nice facility, we like it, I'm just saying that that's a ton of water coming off of this facility, and sort of to make, one of the reasons it's taken us a while to get this is because the funding on that item that we talked about before, this has to be done before we can get to the grant funding, so you've got to do A before you do B. Any questions on that? Good project, really, I think this thing is like 10 years old, Steve, a 12-year-old project. I mean, we have just, over the years, we've had this and we've worked. Yeah, it is an old project, so it's really exciting to actually get this in the financing plan and a pathway to get this done. And again, as you know, we're coming the other direction on our 3rd Street. So, you know, at some particular point, it'll be nice over the years to connect the two and have that part looking, you know, like this all the way down to downtown. So pretty good corridor, especially because it connects with I-14. So that's a good project. The, another project that we picked up about 2 years ago, 2.5 years, is the transmission line that'll come from the left-hand side, which is our water plant, and bringing it into the southeast quadrant. Eventually we'll be connecting to a water tower at the new TISD building on Blackland. That's really where we're going. We've got one section already in the ground that the zone has done from 5th Street to 31st. So that section to the left where you don't see it is in the ground getting ready to be tested. Next one we're gonna do is the purple. If you look at this purple, you can do that all on the Georgetown Railroad and using Shallow Ford Road. Then we're gonna have to pick up the red and the blue, which has a little bit more difficult on right-of-ways. It is mirroring the existing transmission line that runs through there. So we'll be, most of that line will be paralleling an existing transmission line. As you know, they've upgraded the water plant there to make more water. And so it's just sitting there, we're ready to use it. We just got to get it transmitted over to the southeast. I know this is a project that Richard's always smiling about because this has been on the radar screen, I think, ever since you've been in Temple. And it's very important that we energize the southeast quadrant. It needs water. As you guys know, we spent some time and money to get the transmission lines all the way up to the northwest quadrant. So this is a real important project, and we are working to try to get this done. They've got, I believe, in the city's budget somewhere in fiscal year 28 is when that elevated storage tank goes in. We are hoping that we have our water line over there by that time. Difficult to get that amount of right away. So you can see your right away numbers on here are, a little bit sizable. So, and again, the A1 was the purple. It's going to be 9.6 to get that in, 500,000 in construction admin and 400,000 in right away. And this project we'd already funded on all the designs. So David's been working on that. That second section, A2, is 5.4 million. 300 on construction admin, 500,000 the right away. And again, that third transmission that goes into the plant is 5.5 construction, 300,000 and construction admin, 400 for right away. So it's a $22 million project. We're getting it on a radar screen. I'm not sure it's funded yet, but we're hitting that first one. I think the important part is on the A1, that first line, what we're looking at, we took in this project, when you're going from the water plant over to Lorraine, which is where we're going to head, but even getting it to the elevated storage tank, there was a pump station in there. So in our current financing plan, we had $6.6 million, a kilo number, you know, I think that was the number, but it was a $650,000 number to put the pump station in. We all got around the table and thought, well, why go put the pump station in? You got these dry lines, right? And so we really converted that and really done push that out all the way up to 28 and now attack this A1. So we're sort of converting some of that money so that we can get this moved to our next one. It doesn't take any right away when we can do it all in current right away. So that's that. That's that. Any questions on that? It's a huge project. Going to take a long time to get that in the ground, get it done. But once you do that, really will feed all of the southeast, all our growth into our Synergy Park, and then really that whole area, any expansion we want to do into that corridor. Any questions on it? Last item is this wastewater line. It is bid and we're voting on releasing that bid, correct? It's, you know, this is a real important one. That red sewer line, we own all the right of way, so we didn't need right of way. We had this on the project list, I guess for a year and a half. We have been able to buy some additional properties to the north there. So all of that pink or light red color is lands that we own. So we had David relook at it and to make sure that all the properties we had in this corridor, we could go ahead and serve. And so this is the actual bid came in and really it's been good because we picked up some dollars on that. So we had 905.78 is it, right? No, 600 estimated amount. That's cheap.
And that's what our financing plan.
Our financing plan was the 605.78 and the recommendation, the authorized construction is 631,777. With 100,550 for KPA to do construction phase services. Sorry for my tongue. I was up late last night. I enjoy election night. Here were all the bid counts. And so again, really good. KPA number 7, he was not the lowest bidder or the highest bidder, which is always nice. And we had, again, 8 people bid this and quite a range, and we're excited that we've got a low bid of 631,777, which gives us some additional dollars to use for other projects. And if there's no questions on any of those, what we're going to do now is take all these projects and figure out how to put them into our financing plan and fund it. That means that goes to.
Yeah.
Tracy.
Yeah. Tracy can go through the presentation. Tracy, I can jump in when needed and feel free to ask any questions. But before she gets started, we have met as a group, as John alluded to, we met as a financing plan and project planning committee last week. And then we've had Tracy and Melissa and I have, as well as with John, have had bunches of meetings with David to make sure our OPCs are the right numbers, and the numbers in this financing plan are as accurate as we can get them, so we don't have any surprises. And the surprises we do have, hopefully, are found. So, Tracy, yes, question.
Thank you for this.
Opinion cost.
Opinion or probable cost.
Okay.
I was about to say that because I know other board members when they come on, it's like, what are y'all talking about?
Yeah, and just we try, like when John said he wasn't the lowest bidder, we don't want David to be low and then the bids come in higher, because then we have to find the money to in our finance plan to allocate. So
Big engineers estimate before it goes.
Okay.
So we're working off of that to try to put that into our budget for budgeting purposes, and then it goes to bid, and sometimes they're higher, sometimes they're lower.
It's always nice when he's not, when we are able to capture someone. And so we say, got $1 million project and we bid it for 750. That gives us in our financing plan, $250,000 that they have to reallocate.
Right.
Okay, I have a lot of numbers to go over. I'm gonna go over them pretty fast at a high level. we've dug into them really deep, but if you need to stop me to go back and ask questions, please do. But each year, the process of when we're getting ready for an amendment, usually September, or sometimes October, November, we receive the certified values from the appraisal district, and usually they're certified in July. We go through those, look, review them. We want to look at, in which the project committee and finance committees worked hard together to make sure our projects align, the funding aligns with when the project's ready to bid, ready to build. And then we also look at, we continue, as we mentioned, to update the project cost estimates or the OPCs, look at the master plan for project listings, and then there's projects that we look at and funding for concept design and project visioning. So we received the certified values, and I know for our new members, the reinvestment zone includes now 7 taxing entities. And so this top table shows the captured value for the increment, comparing it to the previous year for TIF 1 and TIF 2. And it shows the increase by each, because each taxing entity has a different geographic boundary that they capture the values, or some of them participate in tax abatement, some don't. But the far right column just shows the percent increase in the values, or the increment, and then the tax levy compared to the prior year, it increased $6.7 million. I just like to drill down and look at the total tax levy by percentage from each entity. Temple ISD's at 52%, City of Temple 23%, Bell County a little over 12%, Temple College, Troy ISD, Belton, and Elm Creek. You can see the numbers there. I also like to look at, and this is for the City of Temple's values only, looking at what the property values, where that comes from, the increment. 51% from industrial properties, a little over 20% from commercial. And we'll explain later, starting to grow considerably in the multifamily residential percentages, a lot of that happening within the reinvestment zone boundaries. Again, a lot of numbers comparing years, but if you look at the first row, look at the industrial properties, which is the largest, are nearly 700 million in value, and in 22 they've doubled. We're at 359 million. Again, this is City of Temple only. Look at the 10 largest taxpayers in the reinvestment zone. They make up 61% of the revenue. As the bankers in the room, you look at that concentration, but it's becoming less concentrated. The top 2 are Panda, what we call Panda 1 and Panda 2, the power plants. And then HEB, distribution, East Penn, McLean. Oops, I won't go down, see down the list, but that's $22.4 million, or 61%. When I talk about concentration, looking where we become less concentrated and less dependent on Panda power plant values. Back in 2015, I guess 2016 is when it reached the high. The top 10 made up 91% of the levy, and Panda made up 76% of that total. And now, again, less concentrated in the top 10, and Panda's value is a lot. We're more diversified in the different companies and increment values within the reinvestment zone. I always like to look at Panda's assessed value. And I've got this backwards, I didn't change it. This is their taxable value, meaning abatements applied. But you can see that in 2025, with abatements applied, Panda 1 and Panda 2 is just right under 400 million in value. And then this is looking at their assessed value, no abatements applied, ignore the taxable value up there, but they're right under 700 million in value.
Tracy, go back to the concentration that comes into play when we issue bonds.
Yes,
So one of the things that we actually got dinged on, and when I say ding, the underwriters, when we go to issue those bonds, that they looked at negatively, which ultimately ends up costing us a higher interest rate, is a concentration to Panda, but not just Panda, but the top 10 taxpayers. So a lot of the stuff that the EDC has done, and this actually doesn't even reflect that coming on, so that dispersion will get even better. But that will allow us in our next bond to be looked at more favorably, which will lead to a lower rate.
yes. Higher rating, lower rate. Future increment, revenue, how do we forecast this in your financing plan? It does go out to 2062. Oops. As we mentioned, we take the certified values from the or the certified values as our baseline. We add back expiring tax abatements that we know and the value of those. We add new real property values of big projects like Meta, HEB, a lot of what TDC is doing. We'll estimate and forecast what kind of value they'll add to the row. We add that in, and then starting in like 2030, 2031, we had a 1% growth. But conservative in that, but we try to really drill down on the new real property and expiring tax abatements. This chart, I told you earlier that we had over 6 million in increase from revenue comparing it to the prior year, if you look at 2025. But our plan already had some of that built in. So the actual net increment added to our plan for 2025 is 4.2 million. It grew almost 6.2 from the previous year, but we only added because we already had some of it in the plan. And then I show it as each year with this proposed amendment and revenue estimates. This is the annual increase to the increment that we'll be adding.
Yeah, and from a financing, from the board's perspective, Tracy and Melissa do a really good job in trying to be really detailed and conservative. So in the 6 years I was on this board the first time and the year and a half I've been on this time, very rarely do we not have increased revenues when we get certified tax rolls in, just because we try to be really conservative, which goes back to like our project plan, making sure that we have projects that are designed and ready to go so that when we do get extra money, we have a place to let those projects go.
Oh, okay, the proposed amendment that you have before you. And this is showing the change to your plan, but I wanted to highlight what the source of funds that we're using for the projects and moving money around. But the first row is the increase in the increment revenue that we just went over. And I won't go through every line item, but I'll go through the major ones. But a big source of funding that we're using is from the sale of with the land committee, and TDC has bought several tracts of land, and they will be selling that land. And this shows revenue from the sale of that land. And the 3.5 million is actually ready to close very soon, and the 16.4 million in contracts. Also to highlight this, we're adding the grant revenue John had went over, and just also on a lot of the South Temple projects, the line A, B, and C, some of that's accelerating funding and then adding some funding to it. So we're showing just where the money comes back from not using it in 2027 when we might have used it a year before that.
One thing to keep in mind on the land sale, and we are programming, those land sales have not closed yet. There is like a pathway to get them closed and otherwise and purchase and sale type contracts on those. So I think those are real numbers, but we went ahead and programmed them as a revenue source so that we could allocate funding in our financing plan accordingly, but we are not planning on letting any of the projects, or we can't let the projects that those land sale numbers will fund until we actually collect the funds. So, but you'll see both the revenue and the expenditure in this plan, but know that it's not going to be those projects aren't gonna be let until it's actually closes.
Okay, use of funds, just highlight a few here too. Earlier, when Tyler mentioned that why are we still doing 24 when 24 is over? We haven't actually closed 24 out. We'll be rolling all of that forward at your next meeting. So we do have some adjustments to that. There's the 2 million in 24 where we're funding for the outer loop change order. We have the funding for Veterans Memorial, the regional detention pond. And then others, the rail, just various ones. I won't go over each one of them, but here's where transmission A1 funding in 2026, the construction. 2 and 3 are in 2027. And then we also have some funding allocated for land acquisition, $7.7 million. And then public improvements is just where we kind of let unprogrammed money will flow there.
One thing on the land acquisition, like the zone, that's not right away, but there's a land committee that is made up with zone and TDC members that we've used to acquire land. So that line item in particular would go to amend an existing agreement which we've already used successfully to fund land purchases. But most of those funds are dependent on land sales that are in process.
The next slide, I just kind of wanted to summarize Veterans Memorial. John had went over all these numbers. The shows in 2025, the 9.3 million for the first phase from the TC apartments up to you. And then 2026, the funding from you as far as we can go up to O. But that's real close to the 20 million. We did use part of that 5 million on the 607,000 on the Friars Creek detention pond. Part of the non-grant, non-increment. Another proposed amendment in this plan is a public safety fee. We have it programmed, it's 2.2 million, 2,209,034. And yes, that's a specific number because there's an annual calculation of that each year based on certified values. And right now we have it in the plan beginning in 2025 through 2030. It's restricted for public safety and it's based on residential values for the city of Temple only that are derived from residential, multifamily or builders lots. And you know, turn it over to Brenda.
Yeah, I'm sorry, just wanted to really quickly to say that while this line item appropriates funding, we will bring back an agenda item just like we would on a construction contract. We'll talk about this in more detail. Happy to talk about it today as well, but we will bring an agenda item back at the next board meeting for you to adopt a resolution that'll have the details of the program in here. So don't feel like you're making that vote today. This is just the financing plan amendment, but the chair, I'm happy to go into more detail or have a discussion today, or we can defer to the next meeting, whatever the board.
If anyone has any questions on this, some haven't seen it before other than just in the
Yes.
packet, and it is just an appropriation at this time, like you said, it'll be brought up, but if anyone has any comments on it.
And do on that, on the 6 years, and I understand that's through the plan, the
Right.
financing plan. Can we look at that for a shorter time and then say 2 years and then adjust accordingly each 2 years to work through our budget and your budget and make sure that it's applicable? You know, we want to do this, but we could actually adjust it up or down each 2 years.
Sure, and it actually is, and yes, sir. We are proposing a sunset review for the program in general, but there also be an annual review because it is a specific calculation. It's not a fixed amount. It's based on and the actual dollar amount that's associated with just residential properties, just within the reinvestment zone, and just revenue that is generated from City of Temple taxes. So this is an estimate based on the current year's figures, but each year we will need to look at that. And Tracy has proposed in the current financing plan just a fixed number, but we will need to make that calculation each year and review it in addition to the sunset review that we're proposing as well.
And I guess maybe just, I'm not sure everybody understands exactly why we're doing it, what
Sure,
it is.
if I could briefly say,
Yeah.
I would be happy to do that. So, as Tracy mentioned, earlier in her presentation, one of the things that you'll note is that that residential development within the reinvestment zone has really, accelerated over the last few years. And why that is meaningful, for our budget and y'all's is that the way that the reinvestment zone works is it is not a, and Bob has already heard me say this today for a different topic. The reinvestment zone is not a taxing entity. We are not generating additional taxes here. What it does is it allocates an increment or a growth portion of taxable revenue in a specific geographic area. And the amount of that flows into the reinvestment zone fund for us to allocate towards infrastructure projects that help to secure additional investment within that geographic area is generated from real property within the zone. Personal property taxes continue to flow to the general funds of the participating taxing entities. And so in the traditional development that happens within the reinvestment zone, you kind of, when you or I think about the North Industrial Park or the South Synergy South Industrial Park, there's usually a pretty healthy mix of both real property that's generated from those investments as well as personal property that's coming off of almost every industrial project has, a 60-40, 50-50, 40-60 mix. Panda was an exception to that, but in general, a project that generates revenue for the zone will also generate revenue for the participating taxing entities. Residential development is different in that unless there's practically no personal property generated from residential development unless you have like a minor, home occupation out of your home. There might be, a fraction of personal property, but for the most part, that is all real property. So 100% of that revenue that's generated from residential developments within the zone flows directly to the reinvestment zone fund and not into the individual taxing entities to provide supportive services for that. Now, for some of the taxing entities, that doesn't make a big impact. But for the city of Temple in particular, we are required, of course, to provide supportive services to those residential developments, notably police and fire services. And the way that we pay for police and fire services is through property tax and other general fund revenue as well. But that's a big part of that. So what this is proposing to do is to just isolate out that revenue that's associated with the city of Temple, so not the other taxing entities. So again, I think, Tracy, I don't have the number off my head, but I want to say 80% of the tax funding would still flow to the reinvestment zone for those residential properties. But the city of Temple's portion would then be allocated towards a restricted fund where we pay for police and fire services to support those residential development areas within the reinvestment zone. Again, we will bring an actual resolution back with the program details for discussion, but this would provide the funding allocation to support that proposal that'll be coming for your consideration at a future meeting.
Thank you very much. Anyone, any other comments, questions about that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if for your concern, I think on our financing plan amendment, we're not required to show it for 6 years. So if you want to show it for less, obviously we would have an agreement that we would work out, but the financing, as Bob said, what we're voting on today is not the agreement or the term, it's the allocation of the funds to potentially be used for that so that we could enter into an agreement. So, but we can adjust the duration of that.
Sure.
I will be bringing the agreement soon, so if you have feedback, it is helpful for me to hear it today so that I can incorporate that in the recommendations that we bring. So thank you for those
No,
comments.
Brent, thank you, because your explanation it brought a little bit more light to it. I appreciate it.
And when we talk next at our next meeting, we'll have more detailed information about what residential developments are in the zone, because if you're like me, even being in this world and kind of living and breathing pre-investment zone in much of my day, it kind of snuck up on me thinking, well, what really residential neighborhoods are within the zone? And so I can provide some of that information that will provide more clarity into kind of what the issue is and how we're trying to solve it in that way. And I think it also would help, and if you will entertain the opportunity, I'll be brief, but I think particularly fire, it would be helpful to discuss a little bit about what we hope to be able to accomplish with additional funding in terms of additional fire stations to serve those residential areas that are being developed within the zone.
Anybody else?
It is not the capital, but personnel.
Yes, and we will, yes, so it's not a capital issue, it's not building stations, that's not what we're asking for your support on, it's really providing the operational funding for the day-to-day staffing of those stations. And police as well, but fire is fire is on my shoulders right now.
Anybody have more questions of Tracy on her presentation?
The only thing I'd add, like, Tracy just went over the changes and the additions, but what we're voting on is our actual full financing plan, which is 175 lines. And so, we try to, it's 175 lines because we try to make it broken out enough so that we don't get surprised. And, we try to break out design, construction admin, the actual project. But what we went over, only the changes to what we had in the financing plan previously.
And financing plan was attached to the agenda was sent out.
The master plan, funding, the financial plan, and the project plan. They should, all the numbers should take the time. So,
On the use of funds chart that was up there,
Mhm.
it showed on the hourly change order $2 million. And is that the difference? Because in the presentation, it was 3, right?
yeah, we already had some contingency.
Yeah.
And so the 2 million funds what's not funded with the contingency and leaves, I think, 300,000 more in contingency.
And Steve, that North
Good
Rail 64 increase at the rail site with 1.2. We had 2.5 in our previous financing, so we're adding $1.2 million Today,
There's
so-
several lines like that, it's just the delta on this particular slide.
Thank you.
And that rail spur, that had been on there for a number of years. And then it,
Right.
It was one of those things we agreed to do 5 years ago, but we never changed because they didn't say we needed it. Now they need it, and we went to go update the OPC and then find money.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, before you vote, I have some early Christmas gifts to hand out. I have abstention forms for a bunch of people today. So ultimately, in abstaining on items is your choice, but staff has made a few assumptions and tried to prepare this for you. So that was actually yours, sir.
okay, thank you.
I've taken the liberty to list the item on there the item or items that you'll need to abstain from, and then selected just the general abstention. You do need to read through those, and if there's another one or more that apply, check that, and then we'll notarize those for you if you, and again, I'm not making you abstain, if that's ultimately up to you, but I think you might have an interest in one that might be abstention, and I may have to explain those if you need help with that.
I'll warn you, I'm turning on the lights, so hold your eyes. Maybe.
Okay. Tracy, thank you, John, thank you, Tyler, great presentation. We're going to the next, item number 4, and there will be abstentions on that. I can go ahead and just announce them before I read it on item 4B and 4D. Really, Ryan, Tyler, and John will be abstaining on that, and then on 4C, John and I will be abstaining on that item, and then Tyler will be reading in 4C before we call the vote on that. Okay. so-
Proceed.
proceed, Yeah.
Is ours B and D? Or
We're-
just D?
B and D.
B and D.
Okay, consider amending tax increment financing reinvestment zone number one financing project plans to align with the master plans, including adjustments to revenues, operating expenditures, and public improvements for the fiscal years 2024 to 2062. The proposed actions are as follows. A, approve the financing project plans excluding lines 11, sale of land, line 305, outer loop from IH 35 to Winland, and line 467, Friars Creek Regional Detention Pond. So may I call the vote for 4B and D together? Do I need to do them separately?
I just want to clarify, B doesn't have, if you're just abstaining because of your role in the bioscience district, you won't have to abstain on B, just D.
Okay. And then let's,
It'd probably be easier to vote on each item separately because different combinations of people
Combination,
need
yeah,
to
right,
abstain
yeah.
for different reasons.
Yep. Okay, so on item 4B, approve, yeah, but let me do A first. I just read it. I read that in, so let's need a motion for 4A, please.
No move.
Motion, second? Second? Any discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, 4B, approve line 11, sale of land. Have a motion, please.
So
Motion, second?
Second.
Second? Discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Okay.
Opposed, same sign.
Yeah. 4C, approve line 305 outer loop from Interstate Highway 35 to Winland. Do I have a motion? Second? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, 4D, approve line 467 Friars Creek Regional Detention Pond. May I have a motion, please? Motion, second? Second, Bo. Discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Noted exception.
And then, yeah. Mention that. Okay, item number 5, consider recommendation to city council to authorize contract amendment number 1, professional services agreement with Casper Patrick Associates LP for the construction phase services for Synergy Park wastewater improvements project in the estimated amount of $500. We have a motion? Motion, second?
Second.
Motion a second. Discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item number 6, consider recommendation to the city council to authorize a professional services agreement with Casper Patrick Associates LP for design, bidding, and construction phase services required for Northwest Little Elm wastewater upsizing in the estimated amount of $367,700.
Motion.
Motion? Second? Any discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, number 7, consider recommendation city council authorize contract 7, the professional services agreement with Casper Patrick Associates LP for environmental services for the downtown city center phase 2 project in the estimated amount of $58,200. Motion? Second? Discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 8.
Can you hand this one to Tyler as well?
Yes, I'm getting ready to do it. Yep, getting ready to hand it to Tyler, and John and I will be abstaining on this.
Okay, motion number 8, consider a recommendation to the city council to authorize a contract amendment number 17 to the professional services agreement with Casper Patrick and Associates LP for design services for outer loop north phase 3 from Winland Road to I-35, an estimated amount of $146,000. For a motion. Bo, second, Thomas, all in favor? Any opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 9, consider recommendation city council to authorize a construction contract with A&S Undergrad LLC, Skempner, for the construction of Synergy Park wastewater improvements in the estimated amount of $631,777. Motion, please.
Motion.
Second. Any discussion? Not all in favor, please say aye. Pose same sign. Motion carries.
I think Bob have to abstain from 10.
Okay. Okay. Item number 10, consider a recommendation, city council authorizing change order number 6 to the construction contract for RT Schneider Construction Company Limited of Belton for the downtown city center phase 2 project in the estimated amount of $114,573.15. Motion. Steve, second. Second, John. Discussion. Not all in favor, please say aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 11, Cable project update from Temple Economic Development Corporation. Have today. And then item number 12 is receive a project update from the city manager.
Good afternoon again. I did want to make everyone aware of a hearing that will be happening tomorrow morning. The Senate Committee on Local Government will be having a hearing, and one of the agenda items that's been posted for that hearing involves the way they've worded it is to basically take a look at whether I think they specifically said mechanisms for dissolving taxing entities after they've served their useful purpose, and it specifically lists out municipal management districts and tax increment financing reinvestment zones as the two things they're looking at. As we've already talked about, TERS is not a taxing entity, so that's a little bit of a confusing wording, but as many of you have been in a presentation or two with me in the last few months about the upcoming legislative session, it's that time. So every 2 years we have a lot of fun as we go through and work to advocate for our interests at the state. So I wanted you to know that we are prepared for that hearing. We'll be monitoring what comes out of it, and I'll keep you informed. I don't think there's any action that needs to be taken by anybody here at this time, but it is something that we're closely watching because it is something that can affect the ongoing projects and work that we're doing here. Other than that, lots of capital projects are still underway, both from the updates that David Patrick already gave you related to the projects funded by the reinvestment zone. But we continue to have a very robust capital improvement program through our mobility improvements and water and wastewater improvements as well. I think all projects are going well and are on track. You'll see improvements, obviously. Lots happening in West Temple with improvements right now to Kegley Road, to Outer Loop, both the project we briefed today to the north, but also a section to the south between Tarver and roughly Riverside is underway. Improvements to South Pea Ridge, to North Pea Ridge will begin soon. Phase 1, the phase that hasn't been completed yet. So lots going on. We are getting ready to bid out the improvements to Hartrick Bluff that will go between Waters Dairy and 93, as well as the second phase of Poison Oak in a few months. So those projects will be coming up as well. So just continuing to prepare and try to support the growth that's happening in our community, both within the reinvestment zone and other areas as well. So, Chair, if there was anything specific you wanted me to cover, I'd be happy to do that.
Thank you for that wonderful update, and thank you for all that you do to help make the zone successful.
But Brent, I would assume the work that we're doing, because we spent seemingly an incredible amount of time, Bo and Jessica and Bob and John on this new master plan. Was that, I assume that helps make the case that we've got a plan for.
That's very logical.
That's our hope.
You know, we and Bob helped us with, Bob provided some advice over the last couple of days as we were preparing some material to help defend. And one of the things we did talk about and have included in some of our talking points is just not only the incredible success that has been accomplished because of the reinvestment zone in the past, you know, just a few highlights that you all know, but maybe haven't tallied up. That just since 2018, that's a marker for me because that's when I was appointed city manager. So that's the time frame I use. So I just know that since 2018, there's been over $3 billion in private capital investment that has been directly incentivized by the City of Temple and the Economic Development Corporation because of projects and infrastructure put in by the reinvestment zone. Over 1,500 direct jobs have been created in just that time period alone. We have you all have funded almost $300 million in public infrastructure projects to support that growth and development. In the last 10 years, we have over almost 300 million, even more in just the next, not even 10-year period. And that doesn't even get into the projects that will come out of the master plan. So I think to say that the zone has served its useful purpose and should be dissolved is absolutely untrue. To say that would provide any meaningful benefit to taxpayers is also untrue. In fact, it would be detrimental because, again, the tax increment financing reinvestment zone is not a taxing entity. It does not layer on taxes to any person, business or residents that lives in the zone. So it's just a mechanism that allows us to dedicate a portion of those taxes that are already being generated to be spent within that geographic boundary with the goal of creating even more investment, which I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but unfortunately there are some folks who have some pretty significant leadership positions who don't see it my way. So we will need to do some work as we usually do. Last session, honestly, was fairly quiet as it related to attacks on RZs. But with this, unfortunately, with this hearing, I'm fearful that it foreshadows that might not be the case in the upcoming session. But that's, that's part of why I, greatly appreciate y'all's ears, you listening to me, you taking my calls, when we need you to use your voice with one of our elected officials or otherwise help influence or advocate or just tell our story to others that just make sure people understand how valuable the tool is and how detrimental it would be if it went away.
Thank you. The one thing for the new members and some others that have been on that may not know this, you look like we did a study prior to Panda about the benefit to the taxing entities that participated, what amount of money they received from the growth in personal property. You could say that, well, the real property that's going in there to fund the roads, sewer, and water, what is the taxing entity? It was returned back to each of the taxing entities. It was over 5 times. So this is what their investment was. And obviously Panda was a little different because of such a large capital, but all the rest of manufacturing and all that, the benefit back to, and then all future ones that we've had, the benefit back to the taxing entities is huge.
And of course, the way that we have things structured is, our school districts are made whole, so that is important. And they suffer no financial, negative financial consequence from participating in the zone. And that is obviously, and I'm sure is important to all of us that, our kids' education is fully funded. We are also able to use that funding and leverage that towards future investment as well.
Thank you so much. Anybody have any other questions? Not, we need to schedule our next meeting, which is going to be December the 11th at 7 a.m. And that's one you don't want to miss. That's when Tracy will be presenting the annual report along with some other items that go with that. But the annual report is always a great summary of what's going on. Then it's a report that's required by law and required to be presented to each of the taxing entities. So I don't have anything else. We're adjourned, and thank you for adjusting your schedule to be here today.